Well, somebody get Shohei Ohtani a chiropractor because he's been carrying this team on his back. We're going to talk about last night's game against the Marlins. Plus, we're going to talk about Luis Rengifo and what do we do with him? And we're also going to give our keys to a winning weekend against the Baltimore Orioles. You're Locked On with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Audio listeners, please rate and review the pod. It helps people to find it. Video watchers, please subscribe and click the bell to be notified every time a new episode drops.
Hey, thank you for joining us after such a big win last night from our Halos. You're Locked On with Mike and John. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
We are the Super Halo Brothers, a.k.a. the Frisch Brothers, a.k.a. Happy Fans, because we finally got a win, breaking a 4-game skid. And, of course, who other than Shohei Ohtani to do it for us, Mike? You doing some numbers there? What's going on?
Yeah, I was just looking. You know when they cloned that sheep, like back in the 90s? Just seeing if they can do that for Shohei.
What was the sheep? Lucy, Bambi, something like that?
I don't know.
Dolly?
Dolly? Isn't it funny that he's the guy? Like, he's the one that has done everything for us. And
Always.
Here's the good news. He really is our ace. We haven't had an ace in a long time. I'm going to say since Jared Weaver. And here is Shohei Ohtani stopping losing streaks, coming into games, and just looking very, very dominant.
Mm-hmm.
And last night's game, he looked incredible, not just on the mound, Johnny, but also as a hitter at the plate. He came through and crushed it for us. Here's his mound numbers: 7 innings, 2 hits, 1 unearned run.
Correct.
3 walks. That's actually pretty high for Shohei in his last few starts. He's
no kidding.
Done really great with the walks.
Yeah.
And then the 10 Ks, he lowered his ERA to 2.44. He's now 8-4 on the season. And John, his next win will be his career high. He won
That's
9
awesome.
games last year. And so that might be a conversation we can have on a different day. How many wins will Shohei get? Because we're not even at the All-Star break yet.
Right.
And who knows what he can put together. And then at the plate, he went 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs, but those were huge, right? And I loved it and actually stood and applauded from my couch in my living room because he went the other way against the shift. And it was a brilliant move, a brilliant hit, and it actually gave us some breathing room. It was a 2-run single that gave the Angels the lead for good. We ended up winning 5-2, and it was the Shohei all-day show last night.
That's right. Let's get into some tweets here because these are super significant. Everybody is tweeting out these astounding stats that Shohei has accomplished since last night. So from Angels PR, he is the one of the pitchers to go 5-0 with 46 plus strikeouts and 1 or fewer earned runs allowed in a 5-game span. He joins company like Chris Sale, Robbie Ray, Clayton Kershaw, R.A. Dickey, Johan Santana, Randy Johnson, Fernando Valenzuela, and Ray Culp. So some good company there, Mike.
I was just going to say that it's almost like a which one doesn't belong. When you got to R.A. Dickey, it was like, I know he had one really good year and one Cy Young, but it feels like he doesn't belong there.
Right. No kidding. And then the 4 pitchers in AL history, this also comes from Angels PR, have 3 consecutive starts with 10 plus strikeouts and 0 earned runs allowed. Ohtani, John Lackey, Nolan Ryan, and Ray Culp again.
Wow.
And in the NL, only Jacob deGrom and Clayton Kershaw have done it. So it's kind of funny. 3 Angels were able to do that, including Ohtani. In fact, Ryan and Lackey did it with the Angels. And then this one comes from Sarah Langs, Slangs on Sports. She said Shohei Ohtani is the first player since RBI became official in 1920 with 10 plus strikeouts, multiple RBI, and a stolen base. Thank you, Shohei, for getting that for my fantasy team. 5 have almost done that combo with 1 RBI instead. And I won't get into those names because they didn't do it. Only Shohei did. So that's all that matters at this point. But man, what a history-making player we have. Give this guy the MVP already because he's earned it. And all offense, I was going to say no offense, but all offense to Aaron Judge. You're not doing what Shohei is doing. And I will spout that until the end of time. And if this season continues the way that it's going, like you said, he could tie a season high career wins. He could easily, I think, surpass 10, of
Oh,
course.
sure.
And it just goes to show, Mike, that look what happens when you have competent, not great, competent bullpen pieces that you can turn the game over to and guarantee Shohei a win. And we saw that with Ryan Tepera and Raisel Iglesias holding it down in the last 2 innings. And that was great to see as well. In years past, especially last year, Shohei would often come out of the game and lose that win because of our bullpen. And I know that the bullpen has been a problem this season, but I will say that the pitching lately has really locked things down and have done a great job. And it's been the hitting that's been the problem, which is why we brought up Michael Stefanik, who started this game, went 2 for 3 with a little squib hit out into the infield. And then he had a nice one right back up the middle. And man, talk about needing an offensive boost. I mean, that's exactly what he was there for. And so it was great to see Stefanik get 2 more hits in this game. I believe he's about 3 for 7 so far, or maybe 3 for 8, something like that. And so that's exactly why he is up here on this team. And so congrats to him as well. But man, all we can do is talk about Shohei Ohtani. I'm wearing my big A hat for the big dub, as I tend to do. I haven't got to wear it lately. So I'm excited to wear it tonight or today.
Well, I was happy to see Stefanik get a couple of hits, and I know that the game is really about Shohei, but I just want to affirm, like, that guy needs to be in the lineup, and he needs to be in the lineup every day. I didn't even like when they pinch ran for him in the 6th inning. Like, I think he needs to stay in the whole time. You know, Velasquez, I don't know if he's, like, playing for something in his contract, this many games, he gets a raise or something, but, like keep him out of the lineup and have Stefanik in there, because Stefanik and his bat is desperately needed in this in this lineup. And I loved that they shifted around a bit, John. Like, they had Walsh hitting 7th and Stefanik hitting 6th. And so I love that. Taylor Ward at cleanup, there was a couple of spots where you're like, this is why he's batting cleanup. He did walk one of those times, but that actually it shifted the game. It shifted the feel of the game, because when you have Ward, Trout, and Ohtani, it feels like, oh, now the rest of the lineup is a piece of cake. But now that they have VR actually leading off, who went 2 for 4, by the way.
Yeah, that was good to see.
I love him at the top of the lineup. And then also you have Rengifo at 5. I'm not a big fan of that, but I understand it, because then you have Stefanik and Walsh. And that actually really, I think, balances the lineup well. So whoever's managing this team, I'm not sure if it's Angel's grandma or if it's Ray Montgomery or if it's somebody, right? But whoever's managing this team, let's keep Stefanik in that starting lineup for the entire game, because that guy, he looks like a gamer, man. I love seeing him out there, and I'm excited that he's actually starting to hit really well.
Can I say, too, I was concerned about VR at the top of the lineup, as he hadn't gotten any hits yet, but it was good to see him get some hits, and he can still move, man. He can still move on those base paths. In fact, he was ahead of Shohei when Shohei was on first and Villar was on second. They did the double steal, and that was successful. And I tweeted this. I said, go figure, stealing bases and taking walks and stringing some hits together, getting runners into scoring position. What a concept. How did we get 5 runs? Because we got back to the basics and the fundamentals. This is the team. We said this last week, and it's frustrating every time we get away from it. This is the team who won 27 and went 27-17 at the beginning of the season. Like, get back to that. And I was encouraged by the post-game interview with Erica Weston. Max Stassi talked to her. I don't know if you saw this.
I did.
But he said, you know, hey, the coaches, we're all working together. There's a lot of internal work happening, because you and I have questioned all along, what are we doing? Are we doing anything behind the scenes? And I trust Max Stassi, and he spoke very honestly, very vulnerably, and it seemed very like eloquent in what he was saying. It was just a trustworthy voice from Max Stassi saying, like, hey, we're putting in the work. The coaches are doing everything they can to help us figure some things out. And I believe him. And I'm excited to feel that, because so far we haven't had any answers. So thank you, Max Stassi, for clearing some of that up for us, because that was severely needed.
You bought yourself at least a couple of weeks, right? Like, with Angel fandom, to be able to say, okay, we know you're working on some stuff, because there was a moment in last night's game where, like, for example, when Raisel came out there and he immediately walked the first batter, there was a part of me that just goes, you know what it feels like? It feels like this is like a softball team, and you have some really great players on the team, and then you have some mediocre players. And the really great players are out there and they're like, I've done this before. I'm really good. And I know I'm really good. So I'm just going to go and have fun. Right. And it doesn't seem like there's any sort of coaching that happens to them. And so when Raiso walks the first batter, it was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Throw some strikes, right? But that's what it felt like. It felt like they're just like, I'm a good player. I'm going to figure this out. So it was great to hear from Stassi that there is some internal dialogue taking place. And I want to see that translate onto the field. And it seems like it only translates on the field when Shohei is pitching. And so whatever they're doing on Shohei days, they need to do on days when other guys are pitching as well.
They need to put up that, the little message at the bottom of each lineup card that says, how will we win today? Expect to win it, that kind of stuff. They need to say, play every day like it's Shohei day, because that's exactly what the team needs to do.
Yes. I love that. Well, coming up on Locked On Angels, we're going to give our keys to a winning weekend series against the Baltimore Orioles, and that's going to be tough because they've played us so tough. But first, Locked On Angels is brought to you by our friends at BlueNile.com. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone, find jewelry as unique as her with a modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile will help you to create a custom engagement ring, one that it just matches her dreams. At BlueNile.com, you'll find simple tools that'll let you choose the diamond shape and size, clarity, and the setting, because for some guys, they're just not good at that. And then there's creative guys like you, John, that are really good at that. So these tools are probably awesome for you. They're really awesome for me. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring, and each ring is one of a kind, and they do this at prices that you won't find at your traditional jewelers. BlueNile.com is the original online jeweler, and if you don't like it, if it's not perfect, no problem, 100% satisfaction guaranteed. And if you need it fast, in most cases, they can deliver overnight. It comes in a package that won't give away what's inside. So make your special moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And of course, Locked On Angel listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. When you go to checkout, just use the code Locked On. Go to BlueNile.com today.
Mike, we have to talk about Luis Rengifo.
Let's do it.
And the conundrum that he's put us in this season, because you and I in the past, we've seen some flashes of good from him and then not so good. And sometimes he just seems like another body on the team.
Yeah.
But this season has really been his season, and he's really showing us something this season. Let me talk about his May.
Okay.
He had a nice May. He slashed 290, 353, 435 with 2 home runs.
Yeah.
But was awful for most of the month of June until the last 7 games of June. So he previously slashed 400, 423, 720 with 2 home runs to finish off June.
Yeah.
And that was
incredible.
Over 7 games. So he was really bringing the heat. But what about so far in July?
Well, and the thing that we've noticed about him is that he's looking more confident at the plate. When we were striking out a bunch against the Astros, Rengifo actually wasn't one that was striking out. He's 5 for 18 with a home run. He had an RBI last night, and his defense looks better. And I say this knowing that he made an error in the first inning. But here's the thing. Jared Walsh makes everybody look awesome. And that was one play that we just expected him to make.
I think that error was on Walsh. I think they scored it on Walsh.
They said it was an E6.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah, they said it was an E6. And so Walshy, makes everybody look good. And so, but I've really been confident in Luis Rengifo in the field. And I think him at shortstop for the time being is a really good move. And so you're right. It's a conundrum. And the question we want to ask is, so what do we do with this guy? Is he a starter for the future, or is he a backup when Fletch comes back, or is he just there, or is he got trade potential, or is he depth? Where do you place Luis Rengifo, Johnny?
Remember that there was a trade pre-2020 that already put the kibosh on, and it was going to send Rengifo and I think Taylor Ward. I'm glad we didn't make this at the end of the day, but it was Andy Pages, a Dodgers prospect, and Ross Stripling would have come over and started for us that season, and that didn't happen. And that was actually pre-COVID, before the season got delayed and turned into a 60-game season. So I'm really glad that we didn't make that move.
Was it Andy Pages or was it Jock Peterson?
And Jock Peterson.
Oh, Jock was in that
Peterson,
too. Yeah.
Ross Stripling and Andy Pages. So it was a big move.
Who would have thought that we actually would be like, I'm glad we didn't make that move because of what Taylor Ward has become. Interesting.
Yeah. And speaking of Rengifo, you mentioned him batting fifth, and
Yeah.
I understand like it does spread out the lineup a little bit more, but he's a switch hitter too, and I think that
Yeah.
factors into putting him up there in that fifth spot because I've said this a lot in terms of building a lineup. I love it when we have guys who get on base, a good hitter, and then a guy who can drive in runs. And it seemed like a lineup like that last night was
Agreed.
consistent all the way through. And Rengifo seems like the kind of guy where you reset that again, and he could either be the on base or the hit guy and then be driven in. And I think that is important for us to see from him as well. And so with Rengifo, I think the big question here is what happens when Fletcher comes back. We also have
Right.
Matt Duffy on the IL as well.
Yeah,
So
it's
I don't know
true.
what's going to
Yeah.
happen there either. My hope is I want to see the four infielders be a combination of Rengifo, Fletcher, Stefanik, and Velasquez. I don't really
Yeah.
care about Matt Duffy at this point because he's
Right.
not going to be on the team
Right.
after this season, and those guys are. So I think that's going to be a significant factor into what we do with Rengifo. Is this really who he is, or do you think he will regress? Do you think that he could be somebody even better? Does he just need more time to cook? Let him cook.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think you got to let him cook, John, because what we're seeing in him right now is that he's getting consistent at bats, and we can't forget about like the human side of players. I don't know if you remember this because you weren't really into the Angels like early 2000s, but Scott Shields had a really great career, obviously with the Angels, but it was like mid 2000s he went through a divorce, and that season he really, really struggled. And that was something that they actually brought up later on in the season. They said, yeah, he's going through this, and he actually talked about it. And so that personal weight, he's carrying that around. Well, Rengifo and his wife just had a kid. And I wonder if his struggles in June were because he's worried about mama, right?
Possibly.
He's worried about his wife. And then when he comes back after the baby was born, what did he do?
Got
he
the
went on a
dad strength.
tear, right? And so he dad energy was awesome. And so I think I like to see what he can actually do, especially right now in the position that we're in with Fletcher not there. I want to see what he can do. Now, I also want to see what Stefanik can do. So when Fletch comes back, I'm nervous that Stefanik is going to get sent back down again.
Me too.
But if we're going to let Rengifo cook, then I understand that move with Stefanik. But I'm also of the opinion that maybe it's time to just DFA Duffy, because I think I'd rather see Stefanik and Rengifo and Velasquez and Fletcher, as you said, than Duffy in that rotation, because each of those guys I really think can benefit the Angels' future. So give me those four guys. I'm a big Matt Duffy fan, but I don't see him benefiting this team much at all.
I don't see him being more valuable than any of those other guys either.
That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, because they are contributing on a level at the same level as Matt Duffy has been contributing this season. I know that he had a high average for a while, but even he's struggled with the hitting slumps that we've been through this season. So I will say that when it comes to Rengifo, we've seen his numbers in AAA and the guy just mashes. And
yes,
I think that goes back to the consistency and the output that you have when you have consistent at-bats like that. It's translating to the majors. And I think the same thing could be said for Stefanik. I think that Stefanik having consistent at-bats is a good thing. I also think that Joe Adell having consistent at-bats, like it's time to bring him up. I mean, you know, Monte Harrison is not anybody that I wanted to see on this team. And no offense to him, but Joe Adell is somebody I do want to see on this team. And with Marsh struggling, I think it's time to bring up Joe Adell and have them platoon. I always feel like we end up in Joe Adell territory when we have conversation about other players, but this is all to say that what I'm seeing from Luis Rengifo, in that he was very good in AAA and it's translating to the majors finally because he's getting consistent time. I think the same could be said for any number of players like Stefanik and Joe Adell. So I think that I'm with you. I think that the Angels should roll with that infield and have Velasquez off the bench, give Stefanik time at second, give David Fletcher. David Fletcher can play third. He played third for us in 2019. So that is also an option if Villar is not going to be an option every day. So, you know, I think they have a lot of options, and it's never a bad thing to have options. I just don't want to see anybody get optioned, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, I think that's a good bet to see Rengifo actually play a bit. And speaking of betting, our friends at BetOnline bring you this episode of Locked On Angels. They're your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news. BetOnline is your continued source for all sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. John, did you see the MMA fighter come out to the Undertaker's music on, I think it was last Saturday? That was awesome. He actually said he wants to go to the WWE, but this is Locked on Angels. Let me talk about that. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. Bet online, where the game starts.
Everybody's going to figure out that we're nerds. Oh, man.
Dang it.
Mike, we always save our keys to a winning weekend series for Friday, but because the Angels are starting this weekend series against the Orioles in Baltimore, the Baltimore Orioles, trying to save time, that it's time for us to give our keys to a winning weekend series. Now, I will say this. I had been saying earlier this week that the Angels were swept by Baltimore, but I was wrong.
Yes,
I was corrected by a Twitter follower, Drew Dodson at the Mad Hatter 47. He says, you guys keep saying the Angels got swept and they didn't. And that's all on me. I took the blame for that. And I said, sorry, I don't know why I kept thinking that. He said, it's all good. I live in Baltimore and have an entire family of Orioles fans. And if they got swept that week, I'd be hearing it all season up until this weekend. So he said he just wanted to make that clear. And I told him that I appreciated it. He's taking the family to a suite on Saturday for the
fun.
Angels-Orioles game. So
Awesome.
Shout out to Drew Dodson. Thank you for the correction. We hope you guys and your family have a fantastic time.
Yeah, Drew, send us some photos. We'd love to see what your seats look like. And
yes, please.
We'd love to see the pictures from Baltimore. Never been there, so I'd love to see the stadium.
That would be so cool. Yeah, that would be a great stadium to get to. Now, we have our keys to a winning weekend series, our musical keys.
Yes, we do.
And I'm going to let you take it away, Mike. What's your musical key to a winning weekend series against the Orioles?
All right, you ready for this one? I chose War. What is it good for by Edwin Starr.
War!
Absolutely nothing. Say
it
again. Here's why I selected it. We have Mike Trout and we have Shohei Ohtani, who lead the universe in WAR every year. And if you're not familiar with WAR, it's wins above replacement. How many wins do they stir up versus a replacement or an average player in the league? And so Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani are always leading in WAR, especially Trout. He actually was the guy, I think, that kind of invented it and gave people a tough run when they were voting for the MVP when he was up against Miguel Cabrera. Who? And so here's why I selected it. Because the WAR for those two guys is incredible. But what is it good for? Huh?
Absolutely
if the rest of the team doesn't do anything, right? And so I think that the key to this weekend series falls in the lap of three players: Jared Walsh, Brandon Marsh, and Max Stassi. Now I want to give you some stats here.
Okay.
Trout's WOBA, that's his weighted on base average. Okay.
WOBA. We love WOBA around
his
here.
WOBA. His WOBA is in the top 1% in the league. He is 415 in his WOBA right now. Ohtani's expected slugging percentage is 631. He's in the top 2% in the league. Now, get this. Walsh and Marsh have a combined WOBA that is only 100 points higher than Trout himself. Them together, right? And then Stassi and Marsh have a combined expected slugging percentage that's only 90 points higher than Ohtani by himself. So here's the point. If Trout and Ohtani don't, then the team won't. And when Trout and Ohtani do, it feels like the rest of the team watches. What we saw last night against the Marlins is what we need this weekend. We need everybody on board, especially those three guys, Walsh, Marsh, and Stassi, to lead the way, because our WAR leaders are always leading the way and they're always stepping up. But imagine if Marsh went on a run. Imagine if Marsh got a hit every game this weekend. Imagine if he got a sacrifice fly, or he moved a runner over, or he went the opposite way, maybe a sacrifice bunt. Imagine if Walsh actually hit a couple of doubles this weekend and knocked in a few runs. And imagine if Stassi just started hitting. And I know last night his bat looked a little bit more like it's warming up, right?
Yeah.
But let's say that Stassi gets a home run or two this weekend. The Angels are going to feel that. The Angels are going to have this weight off the shoulders of our WAR leaders, Trout and Ohtani. And so we need to help our WAR boys out, or we'll be singing the song WAR, What is it good for? And what is it good for right now? About 6-7 games under 500.
You got me almost singing it. Darn it.
I know.
Darn
That's
it.
good. That's good. So that's my key to the weekend. We need to help the War boys out, or else what is War even good for, Johnny?
I like that. Hey, so I have a song for you. You know I love my cheesy jams, my yacht rock songs. So I chose Steal Away by Robbie Dupree.
Oh, I love it.
Why don't we steal away? Dun, 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 dun.
That's great content right there. That's great content.
That's right. Mike, I picked Steal Away because the Angels did exactly what I wanted them to do on Wednesday night. They stole some bags, they got into scoring position, and then they drove in those runs, or they took walks. And you know why? Because they frustrated the pitcher on the mound. Now, I don't know if you know this, and perhaps if you're listening to Locked On Angels and you're an avid sports fan, you might know this, but the Baltimore Orioles, just trying to save time, their starting rotation is young and inspired and very, very good. They have a lot of young pitching on this team. Two guys that we will be facing are Tyler Wells, and we will also be facing Dean Kremer, who are two great young guys. And I think that if you want to frustrate them, you got to steal some bases, or at least be a stolen base threat. We know Ohtani can do it. We know Velasquez can do it. Of course, Velasquez leading the team in steals, but we also could see it out of other players as well, like Jonathan Villar, who showed some wheels on Wednesday night. And so hopefully he can bring that to the table as well. But we have to frustrate the pitchers on the mound, because you're not going to do it at the plate with these young guys. They are talented, man, and they're dangerous. Now, we have a veteran pitcher in Jordan Lyles pitching against us tonight, but over the weekend, we're going to see some more of that young talent. And man, if you're not paying attention to the Orioles pitching, especially if you're playing fantasy baseball, get some of those pitchers on your team. I have two of them right now, and I have Dean Kremer, and he's been pretty good so far. So these guys are going to be hard to score against, but the best way you can frustrate them and get their mind off the hitter at the plate is by being a stolen base threat. So I'm telling the Angels this weekend to steal away. Dun, 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 dun. Come on. You can't hear that song and not think of that like little piano riff right there.
You have to move. You have to dance. You have to sing the piano riff. I love it.
So that's my key to a winning weekend series. The Angels have to steal away in the style of Robbie Dupree, frustrate those pitchers on the mound, especially the young guys who are inexperienced. They're very good, but take advantage of their inexperience at the end of the day.
This is why you make Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now make your second listen the Locked On MLB Prospects Show. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia. He's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow, and his podcast is free and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, tonight's game against the Baltimore Orioles, just trying to save time, it starts at 4:05 p.m. Pacific time.
Love it.
They are on the East Coast, so catch that game. It's a little early. It might be going before you get off work, but you'll get home in time to catch most of it. Turn it on the radio. In the meantime, if you want to keep up with the game and everything else, you can follow Mike and I at Locked On Angels on Twitter. You can also catch us at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Mike, what do we have on deck for Friday's show?
I'm excited about tomorrow's show because we're going to talk about two really important teams in Angel history, teams that you and I've selected that we believe impacted and influenced the team. So I'm going to share about a team. John's going to share about a team. It's going to be awesome. We would love to hear about the teams that you think are important. And we're going to talk about all about that on tomorrow's show.
I love it. All right, y'all. Until tomorrow, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
And we'll see you right back here tomorrow for a Friday edition of Locked On Angels.